Hello, I'm going to compare the Dillon powder funnel, the Redding expander die, and the Lyman M-Series expander die to see how well they expand and flare our cases to make bullet seating easier. You may have heard the terms expansion and flaring is sometimes called belling. Is expansion and flaring the same thing? No, they are not. Expanding is increasing the diameter of the upper portion of the case. Expanding makes it easier for the seating die to push the bullet into the case. We will see that in the Redding and Lyman dies, they have a two-step expansion. Flaring is changing the shape of the case mouth into the shape of a bell or trumpet. Flare makes it easier to place a bullet into the case. Let's look at each of them in detail. The Dillon powder funnel is one piece and then fits inside the Dillon powder assembly. This allows powder charging at the same time the case is expanded and flared. Section A of the funnel is expander, Section B of the funnel flares the case, and opening C is where the powder from the powder bar falls into the case. This kind of configuration is sometimes referred to as powder through expander. The Redding expander consists of the die body, the expander lock ring, and it comes with a die lock ring. My die, which I purchased new in box, did not come with any instructions. Looking closely at the expander, you can see it has a two-step expansion. Step 1 expands the case to slightly smaller than the bullet's width. This makes bullet seating easier, and this is what the bullet sits on top of when you place the bullet in the case. Step 2 expands the case to slightly larger than bullet width. The bullet actually sits in and is supported by this area. Section 3 flares the case mouth. Let's see this from a different perspective. The left part of the image shows a bullet placed into a case that has two-step expansion and flare. I have rendered the case semi-transparent so you can see the bullet inside the case. As you can see in the middle part of the image, the bullet is sitting inside the Step 2 expansion and is sitting on top of the Step 1 expansion. This is possible because Step 2 is wider than the bullet and Step 1 is narrower than the bullet. As the bullet is pushed into the case by the seating die, the bullet will increase case width to accommodate the bullet. This often results in the bulge you sometimes see in a finished round as shown on the right side of the image. On the Redding expander, if you take your fingernail and run it up the length of the expander, you will feel slight ridges. These ridges are residual tool marks. We will see later in the video what these tool marks do to brass. The Lyman expander die consists of the die body, the expander lock ring, and it comes with a die lock ring. It also comes with detailed instructions and a protective sheet. The expander actually comes in two parts. The polished part is the actual expander and flaring tool. The rest is the supporting stem. The Lyman M-Series has two-step expansion and flaring as you can see in this close-up. Step 1 expands the case to slightly smaller than the bullet's width. Step 2 expands the case to slightly larger than bullet width. And Section 3 flares the case mouth. The actual expander is polished steel and does not have the tool marks the Redding expander has. Note that there is no opening in either the Redding or Lyman expander for powder drop. They expand and flare only. Prior to installation, you'll need to know how large a flare you wish to put on the case mouth. This is part of the reloading data you need to gather. As you install your dies, keep in mind you can adjust for the size of the flare. You cannot adjust for the size of the expansion. In my installing reloading dies on a Dillon 550B video, I show the installation of the Dillon powder assembly, so I won't duplicate those steps in this video. But I will say that when installing new dies on a Dillon press, the most frustrating and time-consuming station for me to set up is a powder assembly station, and this is because of trying to get the flare just right. If you decide to use a separate expander die, in conjunction with the Dillon powder assembly, there are two things to keep in mind. First, the expander die should be installed in the station before the powder assembly and not after. If you install the expander die in the station after the powder drop, there is a chance the expander, as it enters the case, will compact and possibly crush the powder. Either of these could possibly change the burn rate of the powder. Second, adjust the Dillon powder assembly so it only drops powder and does not flare. The expander part of the Dillon powder funnel still needs to enter the case. This is necessary so that the case can push the funnel up into the powder assembly and release the powder. The installation of the Reading and Lyman dies are identical. First, remove the expander and clean the expander to remove any manufacturing oils, greases, or protective coatings. Leave the expander out of the die body. Second, place a small piece of 3x5 card or business card on the shell plate and raise the shell plate to the top. Third, screw the die body without the expander into the tool head until it just touches the 3x5 card. Right there. Now tighten the die lock ring. I'm using the Dillon die lock ring for expediency in making this video. Now lower the shell plate, remove the cardboard, and insert a resized piece of brass and raise the shell plate. Take the expander and screw it in until it touches the case. Now what we want to do is lower the shell plate, screw in the expander some, raise the shell plate, then lower it again, and use our calipers to check the amount of flare. And we will repeat this process until we have the desired amount of flare. Once you have the desired amount of flare, leave the case and the shell plate, raise the shell plate, and then tighten the expander lock ring. I have also installed the Lyman expander die so we can do a side-by-side comparison. We're going to expand and flare 25 cases in both the Reading and the Lyman dies. All cases are Starline brass and are many times fired. This means there's a solid coating of residual carbon inside each case. This carbon acts as a lubricant. Looking closely at the shell plate, you will see that there's quite a bit of brass shavings under the Reading die, and just a few under the Lyman die. It is my opinion that the shavings under the Reading die was caused by the tool marks on the expander itself. Now let's remove both expanders and look them over. This brass coloration here is actual brass that came off of my cases and onto the expander. This is the Redding expander. This is the Lyman expander. There is some coloration there. But less than what is on the Redding expander. Both expanders have a buildup of brass on them after only 25 cases. The Redding more than the Lyman. I've never had this much buildup of brass on the Dillon powder funnel. I contacted Redding and we went through a checklist of questions. Was I using new or once fired brass? The answer is no. As I stated in another one of my videos, brass buildup is more common with new brass than many times fired brass. I actually clean my new brass before reloading them to avoid this issue. They also asked me if I'm trimming, chamfering, or deburring my cases. The answer again was no. Trimming, chamfering, and deburring will create small brass shavings that, if not removed prior to reloading, can cause a buildup of brass on certain dies. We then arranged for me to get a polished expander. Using the polished expander, I reran the test with 25 many times fired Starline brass, and the results I achieved were in line with the Lyman M-Series expander die. Let's take a close look at that test using the polished Redding expander. We're going to repeat the same test, but this time we're going to be using the polished Redding expander. Okay, so we've got the polished expander set to give us the proper flare. Now we're going to run 25 cases through it and see what happens. Alright, well this is the shell plate after using the polished Redding expander. The amount of brass shaving is significantly less than the unpolished expander, but just a little bit more than what the Lyman had. So let's pull the Redding polished expander and see what it looks like. Now, this is the polished expander. This is the unpolished. This is the Lyman. We'll take a better close look at these. Next, I checked to see how well the cases held a bullet before bullet seating. This is a 357 mag case that was expanded and flared by the Dillon powder funnel. These two cases, 45 ACP, this one was expanded and flared by the Redding die, and this one was expanded and flared by the Lyman die. When I place a bullet in this case, you can, as you do it, you can feel that it's like resting on top of the flare. But on these, you can actually feel the bullet go inside the case as it goes into that step 2 expansion and rests on top of the step 1 expansion. Now let's try it without the copper jacketed. This, of course, is a lead truncated cone. And again, you get the sense, the feel that it's resting on top of the flare. And the polymer coated one goes inside the case, again, into the step 2 expansion and resting on the step 1 expansion. I've also noticed that when loading lead bullets, shaving is reduced when I use a two-step expander. Now let's summarize the differences of each. All three expand and flare. The Dillon has single-step expansion, and the Redding and Lyman have two-step. Only the Dillon is a powder-through expander. This table shows the measurements for 45 ACP. For comparison purposes, the diameter of a zero-jacketed hollow point 185 grain bullet is 0.4515 inches. The Dillon expander has a diameter of 0.447 inches, which is the smallest of the three. The unpolished Redding Step 1 expander is 0.449 inches, and its Step 2 expander is 0.454 inches. The Lyman Step 1 expander is 0.4495 inches, and its Step 2 expander is 0.454 inches. As you can see, the Redding and Lyman are almost identical in size. The Dillon integrates expanding, flaring, and powder charge in a single step. This allows a single station on progressive press to be used for all three operations. As you saw earlier, the brass buildup on the Dillon is significantly less than the Redding or Lyman. I find that setting up the Redding and Lyman for expansion and flaring to be easier than setting up the Dillon powder funnel. I have also experienced that two-step expansion is better than single-step, especially for lead bullets. As stated earlier, for me, it is more time-consuming to set up the Dillon powder assembly to get the correct amount of flare compared to a separate expander die. And I think the two-step expansion is better than single. The Redding shaved more brass than the other two. I believe this is due to the residual tool marks. Keep in mind that if you polish the expander, you could void the factory warranty. The Lyman two-piece expander can come loose with use. I use blue Loctite thread locker to secure the expander onto its stem. Both the Redding and Lyman require more frequent cleaning than the Dillon and will take up a separate station on progressive press. The use of the Redding and Lyman dies do not replace the need for a separate powder charge step. On a Dillon press, you will still need the Dillon powder assembly. And remember to charge the case after it is expanded and flared, and make sure the Dillon powder funnel does not increase the size of the flare. In conclusion, both the Redding and Lyman do a superior job of expansion and help reduce bullet shaving. However, they will take up a separate station on progressive press, could cause extra wear on brass. Of the two, I prefer the Lyman M series because the expander is factory polished, and I can resolve the issue of the expander coming loose with Loctite thread locker. I hope this video was useful to you, and thank you for watching.